All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to take your Bitcoin know-how to a whole new level. We're moving past just the basics of buying and holding. We're getting into the advanced stuff you really need to know to secure your digital wealth, not just for you, but for the long term and maybe even for the next generation.
So, let's kick things off with this powerful statement. It really gets to the heart of why something like Bitcoin even exists in the first place. And look, this isn't just someone's opinion, it's a lesson that's been written over and over again throughout history.
You know, to really get why a new form of money is so revolutionary, we first have to wrap our heads around the problems with a system we're all using every single day. Just take a look at this. It's a brutal, repeating cycle, right? If you look at just this one region, over the past 130 years or so, you see 7 different currencies. They went from gold and silver coins, to their money getting devalued after the war, to the government literally just confiscating people's savings in 1953. The pattern is just crystal clear. Every generation that did the responsible thing and saved in the official money, well, they saw their wealth wiped out by political decisions.
And you know, this constant instability, it creates something the source material calls a fiat mentality. It's this subtle idea that we just kind of accept that a central authority should be in control of our money. But a system like that makes saving pointless because your money is always losing value. Instead, it pushes everyone to take on more and more debt just to keep up.
So, the big question is, how do you break out of that cycle? Well, that's where we get to a completely different way of thinking. Bitcoin isn't just some new tech fad. It's really a return to some very old, very solid principles.
And that brings us to this core idea of sound money. It's not valuable because a government says so. It's chosen by people on the open market because it has properties that make it a reliable way to store your wealth over a long, long time. And the key to all of it is what's called unforgeable costliness, the fact that you can't just create it out of thin air.
And here's a great breakdown of what those properties actually are. Sound money has to be easy to verify, easy to divide, durable, portable, and, this is the big one, it has to be scarce. Unlike government currency, which can be printed into oblivion, Bitcoin's properties are locked in by math and code. They're not based on the promises of politicians.
Okay, but here's the twist. This new kind of absolute ownership, well, it comes with a whole new set of responsibilities. It creates a paradox of control that, frankly, has taught some people some very, very harsh lessons.
I mean, think back to the collapse of FTX in 2022. That was an absolute earthquake for the industry. You had millions of people who are sure they own Bitcoin, only to find out they were holding an IOU from a company that was basically bankrupt. It was an incredibly painful, but really necessary wake-up call for everyone.
And that whole disaster brought back a classic, super important mantra in this space. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin. It's a simple phrase, but it perfectly captures this whole philosophy of being your own sovereign. If you aren't the one controlling the private keys, you don't really own anything.
So, this really boils down to a fundamental choice you have to make. On one hand, you have custodial wallets, like on an exchange. Super easy, right? But you're trusting someone else. On the other hand, you have self-custody with a hardware wallet. Now you are in full control. You are your own bank. That gets rid of all the third-party risk, but it means that all of the responsibility for security, well, it's 100% on you.
Okay, so if you're going to choose to be your own bank, you've got to start thinking like one. It's time to build a fortress, a digital fortress, around your assets.
All right, the foundation of your entire fortress is your seed phrase, those 12 or 24 words that can bring your entire wallet back to life. Protecting this is your single most important job. I mean it. You've got to write it down, preferably on something tough like steel, and never, and I mean ever, create a digital copy of it. No photos, no text files. You have to guard it against hackers, sure, but also against physical stuff like a fire or a flood.
Okay, ready to level up? Let's talk about a more advanced technique. Instead of having just one thing to protect, one seed phrase that's a single point of failure, you can use something called a Shamir backup. It's a clever way to split your master key into multiple unique pieces, or shares. And this is what makes it such a game changer. Think about it. With a single key, if you lose it or someone steals it, it's game over. Everything's gone. But with a Shamir backup, you can set it up differently. You could create, say, 5 shares and decide that you only need 3 of them to get your funds back. Now you can store them in totally different places. The loss of 1 share or even 2 isn't a disaster anymore. It's a huge, huge upgrade for your security.
You know, once you start really thinking about long-term security, it brings up another huge question. How do you make sure this new kind of wealth can actually be passed on to the people you care about?
And this is a really critical question that honestly too many people just don't think about. With a bank account, there are all these legal processes for inheritance. With Bitcoin, it's a different story. If you're the only one who holds the keys, that wealth could just vanish forever when you're gone. It's not automatic. You have to plan for it.
The good news is, a solid plan doesn't have to be crazy complicated. It really comes down to writing clear, simple instructions for your loved ones. Explain what a hardware wallet is, what those seed shares are, and how they work. And this is super important. Don't put all of this information in the same spot. And finally, make sure they know who they can call, a trusted contact who can help guide them through it.
So all of this security, this responsibility, it actually connects to a much bigger idea. The shift towards sound money and personal responsibility doesn't just change our bank accounts. It could have huge implications for how we think about the future itself. And it all boils down to this concept called time preference. It sounds academic, but it's simple. High time preference means you want satisfaction now. Low time preference means you're willing to delay gratification today for a better result tomorrow. And the kind of money we use has a huge impact on which one we choose.
And this slide just lays out the contrast perfectly. Unsound money, the kind that loses value, basically trains us to spend and get into debt. It's a live for today culture. But sound money, money that holds its value, does the opposite. It encourages us to save and plan for the long term. It incentivizes building for the future, a shift the source calls a civilizing process.
And that leaves us right here with this final, really profound question. The choice between a money system based on central control, what some have called planned chaos, and one based on math and individual freedom, well, those are two very different paths for our future. The technology has given us a choice we've never really had before. The question is, which one are we going to build?